What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Legendary Talks. How's everybody feeling tonight? This is episode 114. Very excited to chat with a really cool New York City icon, nightlife icon, Everton Haired. Hey, Erica, how are you? What's up? Oh, Rich Thomas, what's up? Celebrity Rich Thomas. What's up, guys? Everton is here. We're going to chat with New York history. Can't wait to chat with him. Hey, Jibo. Thanks for that tip, by the way. I had no idea. What should our drinking word be? Hey, Everton.
What's up, Damon? How you doing, brother?
Good, how are you feeling?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Very warranted. What should our word be?
Say that again?
What should our drinking word be?
I'll let you pick that one.
How about the 90s?
90s.
Okay.
Perfect.
How are you feeling?
Good, man. Good.
Good. So I don't think you've seen this yet. Is this your first Instagram Live?
This is my first Instagram Live.
Welcome. This is my 115th episode, and I basically have interviewed people that I think are very important to culture. You know, kind of specifically rooted in New York City, you know, in the 90s and 2000s, and people have these amazing stories about, you know, I had Jessica Rosenblum, Lisa Cooper, Belinda, Stretch Armstrong, you know, Goldfinger, all these people.
All right, the whole crew.
To really shaping New York City in those 2 decades. So I thought, you know, it was with Kevin King the other night, and I thought that you would be a perfect person to have on here. So.
Well, I'm happy to be on here, man. I mean, that was the golden age.
The 90s was the golden age. Cheers.
Cheers.
So Everton, describe yourself to me or to the people watching, like as if I didn't know who you were. Describe yourself to me.
Okay, so native New Yorker, grew up in New York all my life, people person. I mean, I've always thought that was my talent, was connecting with people. I love it. I mean, that's unfortunately in 2020, it's something that I'm really missing, just even being on the street. I think everybody knows me in terms of I am very friendly, happy to be around people, and
I would agree with you. Are always a kind, generous person in those ways. So you're from New York, and I am, I'm very obsessed with New York in the 80s. I wasn't there yet. Describe New York City in the 80s.
Well, New York in the 80s was, the best thing I could do, let me describe New York in general and how I think of it in general, what makes it the best place in the world to me, is New York is the one place in the world where I've traveled so many places where I don't know if this makes any sense, but it's the only place you can't stand still. Nobody comes to New York to do anything. The energy here is go, 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 go. And it's literally sink or swim, So that energy has always been part of New York. It's always been part of New York lifestyle. It's always been part of New York culture. And it's always made New York the kind of place that, anything can happen at any time. The 80s now, the 80s, you can think of that energy with a lot of grime and a lot of grit. It was like the beginning of everything. And it was just like, you would have the most amazing experience in like a junkyard, like anything could happen, like now when you walk past, say, just take the meatpacking district. Now it's an amazing, beautiful place. Back then it was actually the meatpacking district. Like you would go to a warehouse party, you'd like jump over rats and it was a gritty place in the 80s.
Well, I wasn't there, but I describe it as kind of like desperate, dangerous, and amazing. That's how I would describe it.
All at the same time. All at the same time.
I've also said this: New York is obviously going through a very unique time, and I feel like it's going to get back to that a bit. It's going to be a little more, I guess, dangerous and desperate, and as a result, it's going to get very creative. I think that's where I think it's headed. That's just my prediction. So,
Well, you hit it right on the nose. I mean, if we could jump to the '90s, drink. I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the difference between the '90s and now.
okay,
So, I mean, the '90s, when we came up, what made it so special was it was coming into its own. And one of the things I loved about New York just as a city was that each neighborhood was its own experience. It was like if you were in the Lower East Side, it was a very different experience than being in Soho. And if you were in Soho, it was a very different experience than being in Gramercy. And not just in the core, but even like, say, if you're in the Lower East Side, you're going to dive bars and secondhand stores. And like the whole culture was built around what the Lower East Side's culture was. Just like Soho is, it was new, like new artists and art, art galleries.
Getting European. Each city had each little area had its own identity. That's what it was. And it was
Had its own identity. Now, currently, New York feels like one homogenous
yeah.
zone. It feels like at this point, at one point, it feels like the Upper East Side exploded into the whole city, and it's one neighborhood now.
Well, I don't like to hate on New York at all in any capacity, but I was walking down 14th Street about 3 years ago, and me and my friend were walking down the street, and I said, "Why does everybody look like that right now? Blue mohawk, we're still like the people on skateboards and stuff." It was very, I guess, generic on 14th Street, and it was a big surprise to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I want to talk. So, what part of New York did you grow up in?
I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in East Flatbush, but Brooklyn was my home.
So, as a young person, how do you think that New York influenced you? What was the main, as like a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, how was New York influencing you?
Well, I mean, it influenced your personality and how you grew up. I mean, like, imagine, like I said, growing up in a city. First of all, I mean, I know how it influences me when I go anywhere else, because I grew up in a city that never sleeps, and like there was always something to do. And I mean, I was like a 14-year-old kid going to parties that ended at 4 a.m. in the morning. Like when I go to other cities, I don't notice it till I go to other cities and I'm like, wow, this place is slow. Like I've yet to find a place that, and that energy is in my DNA, like just, even now when I used to have people come to visit me, it was so easy to show them a unique experience in New York because there's just no place like it. But yeah, growing up in the '80s in New York, it put you in a place where you had to learn how to survive, because it was, as you said, it was amazing, but it was equally dangerous.
Yep.
You could be in a great place and walk one block and be like, whoa,
New York, I said, Madonna lived 2 blocks from the projects. That's the brilliance of New York, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Famous person, the bazillionaire, the famous Madonna lived 2 blocks from the projects, so. So what's the first song as a kid that you kind of like, that blew your mind?
Probably it would have to be a Michael Jackson song.
Everybody says that. I usually Michael Jackson from the question because every single person says Michael Jackson. It's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I literally wanted to be Michael Jackson when I was young. Like that was who I wanted to be. I used to watch the Jackson 5. There was a Jackson 5 television show. There was a Jackson 5 cartoon. So I'm pretty sure if there was a song, I think maybe it was probably even one of the child songs like ABC or I Want You Back or something like that. Like I was just a Michael Jackson fan.
And if there's a movie that kind of defined your youth or really described who you were, what movie would that be?
I mean, there's so many. I I grew up pretty much. I'm like, my age is such that I kind of really grew up in the beginning of hip hop culture. Like, I mean, like I was literally in like one of those, you know, popping and breakdancing crews and like the whole, so Beat Street and Wild Style, like those were like the first things that I ever saw on TV that were actually authentic New York, well, sort of authentic New York culture, you know?
Well, I would say that the movie Flashdance, I thought she lived in New York City when I was, 7 years old or whatever. And that's why I wanted to move to New York, because I wanted that kind of lifestyle. I wanted to, walk down the street and see breakdancers like she did, things like that. It wasn't New York, but in my head it was New York. And that's why I moved. In my head, that's why I was moving to New York. So,
You know what was similar to that, a TV show that I thought was similar to that did a decent depiction of New York was Fame.
Yeah, no, I love that show, please. I'm from Detroit. I love that show. And another interesting thing, I think, because we're all every single person I've had on here is a creative, and we're realistically we're thirsty for creative information. And as a young person, we didn't have internet and things like that. So where were you getting your information from? Was it like magazines? Was it MTV? Was it the radio? Where were you getting your information from mostly?
I would say the street. I mean, like I was living it. Like it was like, a lot of the people that like I grew up with just are like, even the, like I grew up watching or seeing, or like now it's funny because they're legends, right? Like even do like they're legends, but they were like, we were on the street together. So a lot of the lifestyle was just, it was there for us. I don't know, sometimes I think about like when you look back, for instance, as I said, I was like 14 and I remember going to the Union Square and the rooftop and seeing, artists like Heavy D and KRS-One and all these guys just perform live, like right in front of you, like every week, Fat Boys, LL Cool J, because hip hop was just starting at that time. And it was like, it was so fresh, and it was an amazing, I wish that more people could have actually experienced that version of hip hop in its purest form. I mean, there's several different versions of hip hop, and the origins of it was it in its purest forms. Our version, when we were trying to really promote where we were, I think was the golden age of it before. And whereas, like I said, every generation has their thing, and I would be the last to say like this generation. I hate saying like this generation now doesn't really get what we got, because it's just a different thing that maybe we don't connect with as much. But I mean, I feel that our generation got it right before it became so commercial that the machines, the marketing machines and the labels pigeonholed it into one specific thing that can make them money. At our point, everything, there was comedy hip hop, there was, jazz hip hop, there was any kind of hip hop you wanted to listen to. Right. You weren't stuck with one specific version of what people think rap was.
No, you're so right about that, especially in, like, let's say the 90s, for instance, is that it was right before it started to become like all top 10 records. They were still kind of
right,
not quite that mainstream yet.
Well, I mean, you can just even see it in the labels at that point. If you remember, like there was so many different hip hop cultures. There were the backpack cultures, with that, other people promoted, like people promoted like Raucus, like the Mos Defs. There was the jazz. There was like Q-Tip. There was the hardcore. There was the lyricist. There were just so many different forms of hip hop that you could like go and you could experience,
Well, it was the last version of pure hip hop, basically, is what it was. But getting back about the the beginnings of it, it's kind of like an artist. Like, their first album is usually their purest and best album. Their second one is pretty good. By the third one, it starts to get what, like kind of really commercial. look at it,
Yeah.
you know, that LL Cool J era was like the first album, let's say, of an artist, you know. And then who did you look up to during that time? Or is there anyone you looked up to?
As an artist?
No, just
As an artist?
in general. Who is someone that like could be a rapper, could be a family member, anybody?
I mean, I definitely, in terms of art, I mean, in terms of artists, you know, I would say in the hip hop, and of course it was Biggie. Like I grew up, but I mean, there's so many people that promoted that. Like, I mean, I know I'll probably get under some fire, but even the Puffy Combs and the Jay-Z's, and like, even though that some people don't think that they commercialized it, but they brought something to it that needed to be there for everything else to be noticed.
Puff Daddy is so instrumental in hip hop.
Yes, absolutely. I hate that people don't give him his props. I think he deserves his props.
We were there. We saw it. It was kind of he came around. It was something else. Absolutely. And then I would say I remember when Jay-Z was like just a rapper. Jay-Z was like just a rapper and a really good rapper, and he had 1 or 2 albums out, and then, you know, they came out around the same time, and I always say I never saw it going the way that it did. Puff Daddy, music, and Jay-Z just kept going and going and going, really. So, you know.
Well, even to give you an idea from me, as someone who was promoting hip hop at that time, and we used to go around and try to book clubs, and they would be like, honestly, they would be like, we would be like, yeah, we have celebrities that come to the club and etc. And, you know, this is back maybe, say, I think this had to be like 94, maybe 94, 95. And we'd be like, yeah, Jay-Z and Puff. And they'd be like, and the club owners would not really, they'd be like, oh, those are hip hop stars. Those are, you know, we don't necessarily. And now those same guys would give their left arm.
You're absolutely right. It's like, oh, it's a hip hop party. We don't want it. Now they're like, and freaking, I mean, they're, you know, they have become icons in the course of the last 2 or 3 decades. So, you know, but yes, you and I were there. We saw when hip hop was one thing and Puffy came around and they made it something totally different in a great way. So,
yeah. There was one thing I wanted to state with you.
Yep.
That I always thought was your greatest gift in terms, I remember when we worked together, and it's a difference between what nightlife is now and nightlife was then. Like when we did parties, and this is why you and I connected right away, is we had the same idea of what a good event looked like, right? Like it was like, it wasn't about the money. Like you could come up with $1 million, and we were trying to put as many people with great energy into a party with your style and your energy, and you're bringing something into the party. And once you filled that room with all that amazing energy, the money wanted to be around that. like I think the way that parties are put together now is backwards. It's like you can't just put boring people with money and expect a party to break out of that, or an event or something great to break out of that. You were amazing at identifying that, and even more amazing at weeding out what wasn't going to fit in a way that didn't insult anybody. Like they'll come back next week with more energy or more style or whatever it was that we did. So
thank you.
And that's what makes Damon legendary.
You are a visionary, but we'll get to that in a moment. So I want to know, what was the first club you ever went to? First part, like the first real nightclub in New York City.
Can I tell you the story? It's really hilarious. So the first nightclub I ever went to was Mars.
Amazing.
Right before, it was the best nightclub. I heard it was, but I had just come out of grad school. Mm-hmm. And and before that, all the parties I went to were were college parties. So I heard about Mars. I heard this was the it place. I'm like, okay, and I go, and I'm standing in line, and I'm literally standing there for the whole night. The doorman picked everybody but me. I mean, he's like, you. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I wanted to say it was racial, but he was picking black guys, he was picking white people, he's picking girls, he was picking midgets, he was picking everybody but me. And then I went back and I spoke to one of my friends, and they were like, oh, you went dressed like that? Oh, okay, that's why.
Did you get in or no?
No, the next time I went back, I literally stood outside the whole night going, why isn't he picking me?
So you went back.
That was my first New York experience. That was my first New York nightlife experience.
That's why you made your parties as good as you did, because you had that first bad experience. You mean? Because I vividly remember I went to a club when I was 15 in Detroit, and I vividly remember the feeling of me walking in. So I want to know, like, what was it when you first got into Mars, or when you got in that first New York club?
Okay, so I'm so glad you asked me that, because that's actually, I want to say that there are two clubs that really influenced me. Mars was one of them, because so let me tell you, I walked in and it was an amazing mix of people. It was New York. I mean, it was everybody. And it was 4 floors, 4 small floors. On the first floor was house, the second floor was hip hop, the third floor was techno, the fourth floor was, I don't even remember what it was, and then people just filtered up and down. So you had the opportunity, and it introduced me to the different musics, because I'm not sure if you're seeing me.
I can see you.
All right. It introduced me to the different musics, because I was a hip hop head, and I could go and I could stay on the hip, but I could go to the house floor, and I could go to the garage, and I could go to the techno floor and learn a little bit about the music and the people each week, until eventually I was knowing those songs and those areas too. And it opened me up to just being open to everything that went on in New York. And I've never seen anybody ever pull off that mix in New York ever again like that. Like, I mean, it was 4 small floors, and it was just,
My first club that I worked at in New York was the Limelight, and that was later, like 96, 97, and they had a huge techno floor, like huge, like 3,000 people. And they had this little small, they had 3 rooms, 4, but they had this little small hip hop room. I ended up in the little small hip hop room every night, and it's the same thing. They had a bunch of different music in every room. Not like, I never went to Mars, so Mars sounds very fabulous, but yeah.
Mars is amazing. There was one other place that I do want to give a shout out to that I got in when I was very young. I actually went there the last day it was open, and it was an amazing experience, and that was the Paradise Garage.
Amazing. Tell me about that.
I don't even know how to explain the energy in that place. Like, I went in there, I had a friend, an older friend. He was like 25, 26 when I was like 17. He brought me there. He had a membership. First thing that I saw, that so many things I've never seen before. Like, there were as many people outside the club as inside the club, because most people couldn't get in. They didn't have a membership. So there was about 2,000 people outside the club partying. And then you get inside the club, and the energy in the club was amazing. It opened after 4, so there was no alcohol. So all they served was juice and fruit, and there was a movie theater, and it was just, it was the first time I saw what pure partying, like, people brought baby powder to put on the floor because the floor got so sweaty from people just dancing all night that it was amazing.
Most people say that are from like the 80s and 90s. They say that by far was their #1, like, hands above everything. That everyone says that kind of the first time they went there changed their life. Everybody says that.
Yeah, it changed everything. I didn't even know parties could be like that.
So how did you end up starting to do parties? I don't think either one of us thought like, when we were 15 or 14, oh, we're going to promote parties and do the door and all these different things. How did you end up, what's the next step for you to then start doing parties? How did that happen?
So the parties started because I went to school for social work.
Yeah.
And I was working for this company called Cornell. Well, it was a government agency called Cornell Cooperative Extension. And this was the area of work I was going to go into after college. I was like social work, and because I wanted to help people. I thought I was good with people, and I wanted to, and that's how I thought I was going to use my skill set. And I very quickly learned that living in New York as a social worker wasn't going to work because I was going to starve to death. You made a certain amount of money, but what scared me was my boss only made a little bit more than me. So I was like, so I started doing parties to augment what I was making for work. I always knew a lot of people, and I started doing parties. And very quickly, what I was doing, making at a party once a week, was what I was making at work
all week
for the full week. Yeah. So I transitioned into, and because in my view, I love working with people. This was still my skill set. Like, I think what made me a good promoter was that I genuinely liked meeting people. I wasn't meeting people to bring them to my party. I liked meeting people. Every time I met somebody that was great, like, I think everybody you meet adds a little bit to who you are. You can learn something from everybody, and that's always been my ethos.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I genuinely like talking to people, and I like getting to know people. And I always say, if someone's weird, I kind of like the weirder the better sometimes too. That's me. Someone's weird.
Oh, no. That's the thing. That's the thing with us. Like, we don't want normal, boring people. You can't do epic stuff with normal people. You need epic people, and epic people are not normal. Like,
so in the beginning, is there anybody that either like you kind of modeled yourself after, whether it be a nightclub or a person, or was there anyone that kind of took you under their wing or mentored you a bit in the beginning?
There were people that, when I first came into the scene, it wasn't like it was now. It was dominated by promoters, but the promoters that there were a few that just dominated the scene. And there were a few that I looked at and I was like, oh, I want to be like that guy. Like, I don't know if you'll know the names, but Leslie from Leslie and Bernard, or Brenton Brewster was another one, because I was like, oh, I like what those guys are doing. Like, I want Leslie that used to own, I can't remember the name of the space anymore, but Leslie was like one of the people that I really, when I saw him, I was like, I want to do what he's doing. I want to be like that guy.
The first time I laid eyes on Lisa Cooper, I was like, I want to be like that kind of fabulous. Whatever that kind of fabulous is.
Actually, I want to say Lisa Cooper and Belinda Becker.
Yep.
Absolutely. Like,
well,
they were so fabulous that it was just, like, I don't even know how to explain how fabulous they were in terms of New York nightlife, that would actually be just give them the right kind of justification.
Well, I say Lisa Cooper is probably, I always say this, she's probably one of the coolest people New York City has ever known. You mean? So, Belinda,
yeah.
Belinda is still doing it. Belinda's amazing right now.
They used to do a party that was, I think, also one of the best parties. I do believe they did it together. It was called Fat Black Pussycat. Might have been a little before you came, but it was one of the best parties. It was mainly a party for women, but guys could come if they brought, like, I think you had to bring 5 women with you per guy.
I know that party. Yeah. It was like a ladies' party, but if you're coming as a guy, you had to be with 3 or 4 girls. I remember that party.
Yeah, yeah. It was such an amazing. That was one of those parties that defined New York nightlife as well. Like you could pretty much go there and see the who's who.
Juicy.
Juicy was good. Yeah, was it Juicy? Was that the name?
Yeah. Frank Roberts is saying that Leslie's restaurant is called Clementine, by the way.
Yeah, Leslie's restaurant was called Clementine.
So who was your first crew in New York when you started doing parties? Who was your crew? Kevin King. Who else?
Frank Roberts was actually like, that was the crew. Me, Kevin, Frank, Granville, Wayne, Rambros, a lot of these OGs that are still around. Cordell was around as well. I know I'm missing a few people, but we had a pretty strong like crew of not just guys. There were guys and girls. Like New York at that time was really was like a little family. It was everywhere you went, you saw, and I don't know. Everybody had their little sect, but all the sects kind of intertwined. We supported, like for instance, Bill Spector had a different crowd and crew and vibe, but I went to Bill's parties all the time. He came to my parties all the time, and we just always supported each other. Richie Akiva, even Noah and Jason. We went, and Richie Romero. We went and supported each other all the time. Charlie's parties.
Well, it's interesting because at a certain point, I was doing the door, I'd say the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of 7 nights a week, and I was doing all the parties. And it was one big crew that just went every night to, like, whoever's party it was the same people that went every night in a good way. You know, like
I do want to just say somebody gave a shout out to Todd, and he was an amazing person. I want to just give a shout out to him as well.
What was the first party you did that really hit? Your first kind of, successful party?
I did a party at Nell's called Funky Buddha for about 5 years. Yeah. That was literally actually the first party I ever did. And it was a funny thing because I did the party. The first time I did the party, I did it as a one-off at this place called at Mars. Yep. And because I loved that space, so naturally when I wanted to do a party, that was the first place I went to. And my first promotional experience was an unmitigated failure. Like, I actually had Mark Ronson was my DJ, and it was me, Mark Ronson, I think this girl named Courtney, and my partner Karen, and we were the only 4 people that showed up to my party. And I don't know why I didn't give it up at that point, but I got somehow walked into a deal at Nell's. So so I was like, okay, let me try it one more time. And I don't know what I did differently, or I think I did also. Oh, I know what I did do differently. I got smart and got some promoters that helped me, like Michael James and Jean-Claude and some old school guys. And it was from that event on, it went from 0 people to, like, I think 500 people showed up to the next one, and it just steamrolled.
Any party that I've done has been the same way. The first week has always been real sketchy. By the second week, it's like a line, and then by the third week, no one can get in because there's so many people. That's actually, if the first party's not great, that means it's gonna be a long party.
Well, the funny thing is, I know that now, but that was my very first experience, so I didn't know that then. I was like, this is an unmitigated failure.
Yeah, my parties have been the same way. You start them, and the first one is like real sketchy. What's your first memory of me?
My first memory of you is actually at, I do believe it was I feel like it was at Nell's. I remember meeting you, and I remember you asking me, you were telling me that you were new to New York, and your energy was always amazing. And the funny thing was, I feel like we connected right away. And the funny thing was, I remember when you were asking if to do one of the doors, and the thing was, me and my partners, we never talked about it. It was like, yes, that guy. Like, it wasn't even like, we argued about everything. We argued about everything, except for you. Like, yeah, Damon said he wants to do the door. Yes.
Well, I kind of coming on the scene and being new on the scene, and it was kind of before, I would say this, it was kind of before a lot of white people were going to hip hop parties, like that was like the tail end of when it was still kind of pure or something. And then I think years it got very, like we're talking about, commercialized. But so I did meet a lot of people in the beginning, and I vibed with a lot of, I remember meeting you too and vibing with you instantly and thinking that, to me, the way I think of you is like, you're such a visionary, and you were kind of the ringleader of all this stuff, and you were kind of in New York, one of the cooler guys in New York at the time, and doing some really important creative stuff and kind of mixing different genres of people together. And, you had these kind of, hip hop parties mixed with a little bit of rock and roll and fashion people and all these different things, which at that time in New York, at least, I hadn't seen anything like that. And I thought, this is really amazing. And like you said, when we worked together, I knew exactly what would make that room be great. So, so.
Well, the thing is, that was always the vision, right? Like, there was no other vision. It was like, I knew that hip hop appealed to everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to say this politically correct.
Don't matter.
In a politically correct way, but the options before that were mostly like some party that you didn't want to get killed at.
Yeah.
Or some party that was so whitewashed that it was like, what the hell am I doing here? This is not even really hip hop, and most of us lived in between that.
Yep.
So well, I was lucky to come in at a time when nobody, not anybody, because I think there were other people. I think that there were other people outside of me that created that vision too. Like, I think that, as I want to say it, Bill Spector was one person who kind of had that same vision. This guy Carlos. There were other people that were Big Frank, who was actually my partner in
Yep.
Sweet Thing.
Yep.
And Mark LaBelle, like those guys, they had the same vision that I had, and actually that's when it became good, was when I hooked up with those guys, because there was a point when I was at Nell's, I was new and I didn't really know anybody else who had my vision until I connected with those guys.
And Sweet Thing was at New Music Cafe, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet Thing was at New Music Cafe.
Go there, and like I think Biggie Smalls would be there. People like that would be there just hanging out at the bar. Like, that was, to me, I think I like Cafe Tabac and Sweet Thing are kind of the first kind of parties I really was like, this is amazing. I love these parties. I think Taquana, Jessica, all that Sweet Thing. I met everybody at
Yeah, they used to always come and support, and we used to go and support them too. Taquana and Belinda and all of them. Jessica too. Jessica did her thing as well.
On here, and people still say that was the best chat I've had. Her stories are truly legendary, Jessica's. So, probably around the same time, you were doing Sweet Thing, and Sweet Thing went on for how long? Like, so long.
Sweet Thing went on for about 5-6 years. It was good. We met, I think that pretty much our whole little clique kind of, I don't know, it was almost automatic that there was a group of people that you were going to see every Tuesday at New Music Cafe, and it was just, I looked forward to it. And the funny thing was, I know it was my party, but I literally looked forward to it, to see those people that I get to see the once a week. I see Felicia was there, and Courtney, and there was so many people. There was like groups of people that came all the time.
You know,
Eric, of course. You know, actually, Eric worked with spun with Mark Ronson.
I know. Yeah, I remember. Mark Ronson sometimes stretch. I remember that. I mean, I remember Eric and, well, Eric was on here as well. I remember Eric and Mark. You know, Mark would always open for Eric. I remember that for many years. I mean, did you do that party? I'm skipping ahead for a second, but did you do that party that was on 13th Street, like after?
Yes, yes, with Bill, the system.
That place,
The system.
like, started off crazy, and I did the door. It was insane.
Yes, that was that. I think the system was the. I don't know if Bill would agree, but I think the system was, for a moment, the actual realization of what we were building to.
I absolutely
like it, you know, there was a point where it was like, holy crap, this is exactly what we thought we could do when we started this 8 years ago. Like, there was a moment when I was there and I saw Robert
De Niro.
I saw Robert De Niro talking to Black Rob over here. And I saw like the guy from 9 Inch Nails with Puffy over here. And like, I was like, this is exactly what I thought it could be.
I thought the same thing. I mean, you know, working at that door was insane. I'll say it again. That was one of the craziest doors because it was the realization of what exactly everyone had been working on for that many years. Also, the timing of it. That was kind of I feel like it was like even in the 2000s at that point. So it's like, you know, Puffy and them had become these huge stars. I remember looking around
Right.
There are so many celebrities in this room right now. I also have a great story about that. I came in, the door was crazy, and I came in to do something, and the VIP was out of control. I feel like you or someone was like, can you just man the VIP door for a second? And Mike Tyson came up, and he had just bit that guy's ear. What's his name's ear? And the VIP was closed. It was filling up, and like no one could come in, so I had to like man that for a second. And I had to tell Mike Tyson, who just bit somebody's ear like a couple weeks ago, that he can't come in the VIP. And I was like, you know, like, look, you see it, it's crazy. You know, I'd be happy to let you in, but, you know, you're not going to fit, whatever. It worked out good in the end, but I was like, this is insane. But yeah, that part is when it was like.
But, you know, you were also the perfect person for that door because I don't think anybody else could have handled that door because there was so many, there were so many people. I refuse, you know me, first of all, I loved, because, you know, I would never come to the door. I was like, this is your door. I knew if I stuck my head out, there was no way I could tell 10 people, you know, let you do your job.
You're the nice guy. Nice guy. Cordell, on the other hand, Cordell. I'll figure it out. You mean so? But that to me was probably the craziest of doors around that time for sure for me. I mean that one. What are some, I guess, party, you know, some highlights, some stories like, you know, I had that Mike Tyson story. What are some crazy stories you remember? Like, you know, Robert De Niro and Black Rob is brilliant. Like, what are some other stories like that?
I had an embarrassing moment. I remember I was doing a party and Stevie Wonder showed up. And Stevie Wonder was my idol. I mean, like that. Like, I don't get starstruck, but I got starstruck for Stevie Wonder. First of all, I was surprised at how big he was because his name was Little Stevie Wonder, but the dude's like a football player. And I run, and somebody says, come, let me introduce you to Stevie Wonder. And I'm like so excited. And I'm running over and like, I'm like, hi, my name is Everton or whatever. And I have my hand out and I'm like wondering why he's not shaking my hand. And then his son yells and whispers in my ear, you know he's blind, right? Like he can't see you.
I did know. God, you mean? I have a funny Prince story too. The first time I met Prince was at Life with Lenny Kravitz at it was Prince's Grammy party, really small party, like maybe 75 people. And they're over there, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Prince. It's Prince. I'm probably 20 years old. And they're walking this way. They're walking, like walking. And they walk up to me, Lenny Kravitz and Prince. And Lenny's like, we like your jacket. And I'm like, Prince, you're amazing. And then they walk away. Prince walked, he's like, he walked away. I mean.
Well, you know, I was there at that party.
Yeah.
And I will say, I've had maybe about 15 parties with Prince. Or Prince is the one celebrity, you know, in the years we've seen, he's never said one word to me. He just doesn't talk.
Love going out.
I mean, I know it's to nobody, but he'll come to the party and he'll sit in the corner and you can't get close to him. But yeah, Prince is my number one music idol as well.
Yeah, me too. But Prince loved going out. Prince went out all of my nightclub life. He's been going out. He went out up until, you know, the last year he came to my party several times. He loved going out, which I like that about him. He loved going out.
Yeah, he loved it.
So what are some other stories besides your embarrassing Stevie Wonder? What else you got?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, we had one where we were at, first of all, Life was the place. I want to give a big shout out to Life as well. That was probably the best nightlife place in New York for a long, like that I know of. I'm gonna say it was my favorite place to go in New York, period.
Yeah.
Coming up, because before that, I don't know, you were around a little bit before that, and you know, the scene was very different in the terms that there were a bunch of little places that you could go to, like Veruca and Sky Bar, and you know, all these little, it was the scene was little bar places, and you had to go to like 10 different places to see everybody. And then Life came out and boom, everybody was in one place, you know?
Right. No, Life had so many, we had so many special nights at Life. And it was, I don't think Life was that long. Wasn't Life only about 2 years? I don't think it was that long.
Yeah, Life was only like 2 or 3 years, but it was, I think it was the best club, just the way it was done, it was just the best place in my nightlife.
Eric LaPoe, who's on here, was spinning there all the time. I remember Eric and I remember Mark Ronson, those two in that room, both of them. And then I also say this too, always, we all knew Mark Ronson was going to become this superstar even then. Like, he just had it, that pedigree, and had it in him. I'm like, everything, I was at the Oscars last year when he won the Oscar, and I'm like, it's Mark Ronson, you know, but at the end of the day, it all makes sense. It doesn't seem surprising at all, you know what I mean, right?
Not at all. I mean, the funny thing was his story was similar to yours. Like, I didn't really know, like, Mark. I think Mark, I got introduced to Mark through a friend I had named Courtney Walter. And she was like, yeah, I got a friend. He might have been 17. I don't even think he was 18 yet. And she was like, I have a friend. He wants to be a DJ. Can you give him a chance? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why wouldn't I, you know? And from the first time, like, he came, you know, I saw this tall, lanky white boy, and I'm like, he's gonna rock this party? I don't know about this. And he gets on the turntables. And I mean, like, just the ability to, one thing that Mark always did well was he took the original tracks of the current hip hop tracks and blended them in. And just, nobody was doing that at this time,
right,
you know, and just gave you, especially for me and for my age, you know, like, crazy to sit there and be like, wait, I know this DeBarge song, and it's the same song as, you know, this Notorious Big song, or and just he was actually schooling people on where these songs came from, you know? And from that first time, I was like, oh my God, this guy's. And you know, the funny thing is, I have a lot of DJs for me, but Mark is the one DJ that I could say, like, in terms of, you know, Stretch as well, but Mark probably brought as many people anytime I did a party with him as I did.
Well, all the girls loved Mark around that time. Remember, like, around that time, the girls were swooning over Mark. He would have like 15, 20 girls around the DJ booth, like.
Absolutely, every night,
you know?
like 50. It was without doubt 15 girls around the DJ booth, just like.
That alone was like a draw. You know? So what is your party formula? Like, what was or is your party formula? Like, I said this every time I take a meeting or something. I say I base all my parties off of a fictitious night at Danceteria that I've never been there, but where Keith Haring was, Madonna was performing. She wasn't famous yet, and there's a Wall Street guy and a busboy on the dance floor together, and black, white, gay, straight, all that stuff. That's what I base all my parties off of in my head. So what's your party formula?
It was something very similar. Like, one of the things I think the promoters nowadays, maybe not you because you have so much more power, but that because all of us that were promoters became club owners, they sort of took the power away from the promoters, right? Because we used to, like, when we did come into a party, the whole room was ours. It's not like today where it's this club and you come in and you're supposed to take care of that table. No, it's with us, we had to come up with the concept. We had to come up with what the space was going to look like, how the feel was going to be, the kind of people we wanted to be, the kind of vibe we wanted it to be, like the kind of music we wanted to play from beginning to end. And we actually had to curate an event, which doesn't happen anymore. I mean, the promoters don't get to curate the event. So like a lot of times it was a long process. Like we'd go over, say myself, Cordell, whoever partner, we would sit and think about what we wanted what was going on at the time and what we could, do a parody on, and then we would build it from there. You know what I mean? We would build the look. We would make sure the DJ matched what we were trying to do. We would make sure that from front to bottom, the door person was right for who we were trying to get, and we'd build it around that. We'd also try we try to build it around what we thought the city needed. Like, I remember one of my favorite parties I did was with actually Richie Akiva and Just Ski when they were like the new shit, the ski group. And we did this sort of like half rock and roll, half hip hop, live mute, and it had a stage. I think it was at Bowery Ballroom, and it had a stage, so we were able to throw on like young acts in the middle of the party. And it was something that we didn't think New York had at that time. And even though it was short-lived, it was a great concept. One of my favorite concepts.
I remember like Aaliyah being there. I remember that party. You mean? So, and if I remember correctly, it was in the winter. That was a winter party.
Yeah, it was in the winter.
First of all, there's nothing better than New York, a New York party, a good New York party when it's snowing outside. Something about that, like, I always say, when the weather's bad, the real people come out, and that's the best part.
Yeah. Well, I always everybody used to I used to have two promotional concepts. I don't know if I think you have the same. I always knew when the weather was bad, it was going to be a good party, because the thing about it is when the weather is good, people tend to jump from party to party to party to party. And when the weather is bad, people come and they stay. They're not going anywhere else. They come, and even if it's a few people, they come, and that party is good and tight, and the energy is great, and nobody's thinking about going anywhere, and everybody's thinking about just partying. Well, it's always a great party.
Absolutely. If you're coming out when it's snowing out, you're coming out to have fun. You're not coming out.
You're coming out to have fun. And
I would love when it'd be like a snowstorm, because the vibe would be so good, because we all knew it was snowing, blizzarding outside. So the vibe in the room would be like extra amazing. I love a good snowstorm party,
The second concept that I used to always say is I love doing events, parties, weekly parties on off nights.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if you could own that off night, people were gonna always come. That's why I think like Funky Buddha and Sweet Thing did so well. They were like on a Monday and Tuesday night. And like, even if somebody else did, like a lot of people would open up events on a Sunday, like they would try to do a Sunday or a Monday or Tuesday. And it would only help me because people would come out, check that party, and then come to our party, and so I always try to establish weekly. I really hated. I mean, I've always thought New York was about Sunday to Thursday. Like, I don't think I've ever been to a party on Friday, Saturday that was good. That, you know, it's you could be there, but like those are the days I want to stay home, Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, because I always say, I feel the same way. I do the exact same thing. I like doing it. First of all, it's no pressure from the venue or whatever. You know, you do your
Mhm.
night, whatever you want to do. I'll do the Tuesday and, you know, and bring, you know, fill it 70, 60, 70% full with absolutely fabulous people and make a great
Absolutely.
problem. And you can do whatever, basically you can do whatever you want during the week,
I,
any kind of
I, I actually, maybe because it wasn't my crowd, never did well on them. You would think that a Friday and Saturday would be a better night for me, but it like I couldn't bring anybody out on a Friday or Saturday night.
what was I doing the weekends? I think I was just working all weekend. Um, so, you know, I mean, like during that time, again, getting back to you, is that, you know, to me, again, I keep saying you are a total visionary and you kind of set the tone, I think, for the next decade of New York City nightlife. What you were doing kind of in the, establishing it in the 90s, by the 2000s, you had kind of set that tone that, and then it turned into more of a other people doing it successfully, and not in a copycat way or a bad way, but, you know, you had kind of kind of set the tone for the next decade in New York. I believe that kind of, you know, what they're calling diverse now, you know, diversity and all that stuff. You were doing that in a time when, at least when I was in New York, no one else was really doing it that way and at that level, which was like sophisticated and fabulous, and, you know, a little bit of rock and roll, hip hop, and a little bit of, you know, gay, a little bit of models, a little bit of all these different things.
But you know, the beauty of it is I'd like to take credit for all of that, but I mean, like all I did was see what was going on in New York. Like that is, like I said when I first started, the beauty of New York is the people. It's like nobody comes here to, like, in this city, you have the best of the best. Everybody comes here to do something. It's kind of like, you know how when people talk, like the thing about New York, even as a promoter, even as a successful promoter, like even as anything, you could do something amazing. And you know how long the buzz on that lasts? Like 5 minutes,
Oh,
because somebody else just did something amazing. You're like, oh my God, that was a good move. Okay, who did what? Like, you have to continuously.
I actually agree. You're only as good as your last party, and that doesn't even really count. If you had a party a week ago and it was good, that has no bearing on what
It has no bearing on anything.
you're absolutely right, because, you know, you're absolutely right. It does not matter at all. You could have an amazing party and it goes up the next week. You know, it just is what it is. You know, so.
Mhm.
Um, Also, so I want to ask you a couple questions too, but you know, getting back to the party thing, my philosophy has always been the weirder the better. I say that. I'm just like, you know, I think that's what the world needs more. The weirder the better. You know, like I always tell, like, now I tell door people, you know, don't do the door really anymore. So it's really interesting for me to deal with door people, and I tell them, if someone comes with a blue mohawk, absolutely. If they come with a blue dress shirt, not so much. You know, so I say, like,
Well, I think we have the same ethos in the sense of I've always my statement on that is normal people do normal things.
yep.
I look for people that are out of the norm, and it doesn't necessarily have to come through in the dress. It could be in the personality. It could be in the way they carry themselves. It could be in the way they think. But I've always wanted to have interesting people in my party. It's kind of like what I told you that I think is lacking now. It's like, how can you every time I go out nowadays in New York, within 5 minutes, I'm asking myself, what am I doing here? Because because you can't build something that's supposed to be amazing using like it with the formula they have right now. It's like, okay, oh, you can buy bottles, okay, you and your whole crew go in. It's like, you know, it's like, how are you building an environment like that?
You said something really interesting, and I absolutely agree. And I didn't think about it this way until you said it. Is that they're building the party the wrong way? They're putting the money people in and expecting a cool party.
Yeah, you
Cool.
can't do that.
Absolutely agree. They're doing it backwards. I agree.
Absolutely. We used to, as you got to make the party, and then people are going to want to be where the party is,
I would say,
you
show
know?
them the way or build it and they'll come. Show them the way, basically. Tell them what they like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, anything else you want to discuss? Any other parties? Anything else before I want to wrap it up? I want to ask you a couple questions at the end. So
No, no, that's it, man. I mean, I think we pretty much
okay.
went through the whole golden age, and
Um,
I'm feeling a little nostalgic.
I know. So what are the three best parties ever? They don't have to be your parties. Three best parties you've ever been to.
Three best in New York City, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say that last night at the Paradise Garage, I've never felt anything like that. I'm going to have to say one night at the System, the night that I think we did the album release for what's the I can't remember his name right, for Prince. We did the album release for Prince, and then there was, and the third party, I'm gonna have to say there was a night at Life where I think they did the Grammy party for Smashing Pumpkins or something like that, and it was just amazing.
Remember Smashing Pumpkins? Yeah, they were on the. I brought the Smashing Pumpkins to the System. I remember. Wait. Okay. So three coolest people in New York ever.
Three coolest people. So many.
Well, okay.
I that one I can't. You know. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Let me give it a try.
Give me a few, and it doesn't have to be in order. Just a few cool people then. Like, for instance, I think Debbie Mazar is one of the coolest people New York's ever seen. But you do yours.
I would have to say, I can't. There's just too many. I feel like if I'm saying one, I'm leaving out too many other people.
Okay, you could. Okay, I would say off the top of my head a few. I would say three: Stephen Lewis, Lisa Cooper, Debbie Mazar. Those are three I would say. Those are. I'm admitting. I'm not saying a million other people, but those are three I can think of right now. So.
Stephen Lewis, absolutely. Lisa Cooper too. Yep. Also, like I said, I also always thought in my scene, Belinda Becker. Yep. As well.
And then hold on, someone has a question.
Oh, you know who else? One of the cooler, even though you're competition, but I thought one of the guys that was on your level, that King.
Oh yeah, I love King. First of all, there's no competition. We're all friends. Come on.
but he had the same energy that you had. Like, King was an excellent door person. Like, I just, in terms of running, there were times I came to Life and he would, and as good friends as we were, he would be like, Everton, you came with three guys? No, lose two and come back,
Door person, you mean?
He was a good door person.
So what are you focused on the last couple of years? What's going on with you now in the last,
Well, right now, I started a company called We Creative, which what we're trying to do is we're building a social platform, a social networking platform that's dealing with sustainable living and social justice. We're just trying to, I feel like right now, the energy that's happening with people is heading in the wrong way. There's like a lot of dislike and hate and tension, and I want to bring, and I'm trying to create something where we can form a network that kind of pushes the way that people are going right now in a positive direction.
Right. Kind of full circle from where you started, you mean?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's anything that I do, as I said, is always going to be wrapped around people. I think that's my core strength.
No,
it's what's always come natural to me, like literally always come natural to me from 4 years old, and it's funny because I always wondered, I watch kids now, and I could see what I know now. Like, people are who they are from a very young age, like that personality, like, you know, like I was always like, oh, I want to meet this person, I want to meet that person, and that was always me,
Right.
you know.
When is your birthday? What's your sign?
October 24th. So I'm right on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio.
Got it. Just wondering. Because I'm the same way. I love talking to people. I'm the kind of person that can turn on an elevator and start talking to someone if I feel like it. I've always been able to basically talk to any type of person, and I like that, you know, so.
I had one person tell me something one time that I thought was hilarious. My friend looked at me and goes, you know, I think you could go to a Ku Klux Klan meeting and make some friends. And I said, I think I could, really. I do think I could.
I don't think, yes, I hear you. Maybe you kind of could. Okay, so 2 questions. What inspires you in life, you know, in the last couple of years? What inspires you now?
Well, I mean, I want a refund on this last year, a full refund, you know, 100%. I'll give it back. I'll take the refund. But in terms of inspiring me, like what I do want to do now is, I want to kind of go out and travel the world a little bit more. I did that early on in my life.
Yeah.
And then I just, you know, when you're in what you're doing, you just kind of, you get stuck, like you don't even know you're in one place, but you are. And I just want, before I remembered how much I loved traveling, and I remember how much it affected who I am as well, because I think when I traveled a lot, I learned to respect people's cultures and differences. And, you know, and you know, I don't know if you'll agree, but when you grow up in the United States, it's shocking when you travel the world to begin with, because you only learn about the United States in the United States, and you think every place else is below the United States. Like, and then you go out and you're like, holy crap, you know?
You know, it is, when you travel, you see how beautiful the other cultures are and how proud they are of their own cultures. And
yeah, how proud and like everything that you learned that you thought, like, I remember, you know, you learn to throw away your judgments, and you learn to appreciate every single thing. And like traveling really affected who I came back as, and looked, and it's probably why I did the parties the way that I did it, because now my view was like this, as opposed to, you know, the narrow view that you have just being here. Like, we're the greatest, we're fabulous, nothing's better than us, you know.
For me, traveling was always like, especially, you know, in my early 20s, you'd see, like I said, how beautiful these places were and how proud these people were of their culture, and we don't get that here in America, you know, like.
Yeah.
What are you grateful for right now in life?
You know, I'm grateful for my friends, and I'm grateful for the life. Like, I think I've been really lucky, like, in terms of, from a young age, I think I've had a understanding of what made me happy, and was able to go for it. And, you know, I've lived my life in a, like, very, you know, I mean, listen, for 20 years, I made a living drinking alcohol and entertaining beautiful women. Like, so I definitely can't complain, you know, but, you know, I think that my life at this moment has been lucky. And what I'm trying to do now is kind of, I think you know, I lived the first half of my life, unfortunately, a little selfishly. And now I'm trying to not be as selfish and give back, and try to give some of that energy back, try to find some people that were like me, and give them some guidance, and put some of that energy back in the world. Because even though I feel like, when I look back, even though I didn't intentionally, it was all the energy. I was just taking it. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I don't think, we're all selfish when we're younger. It's just part of, it's how things work. You're supposed to be, you're not supposed to be, but you realistically are selfish, and then you kind of get older and it's a cycle, you give back. I mean, that's, everyone does.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question. If you could have 4 people to dinner, living or dead, any 4 people, who would they be?
Muhammad Ali,
Good.
Prince,
Great.
Sade,
Oh, amazing.
and Dave Chappelle.
Great. I want to go to that dinner. Okay, Everton, I want to thank you so much for doing this. Like I said, this is
Thank you. Thank you. I had a great time.
my 115th episode.
Oh, look, and DJ LePo.
Yes. DJ the Chandra's here, Elizabeth's on here. We have a lot of old school people. So I
Love you too, D. LePo. Love you, Eric. Thank you, Chandra.
I'm very glad that you did this. I like to, invite people that I think have been very important to culture, which you have been very important, very instrumental. You defined New York in a lot of ways for many years. And like I said, I think you set the way for the next decade. You did it with authenticity, with like an open mind, an open heart. You were kind to everybody. You were absolutely fabulous, always dressed great, kind to everybody. And you really had a really unique and interesting vision that you set out to do it, and you did it. I mean, so
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
And you make
And thanks to everyone that showed up, guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Nah.
Thank you. Bye.